Today we're going to talk about Module 5. We'll talk about the selection process. So in this module, we're going to talk about some of the multiple steps involved, including recruiting, how do we find people, the actual process of making the decision of who to hire. We're going to look at the different tests and batteries that we use for the selection process. Some are better than others. We're going to talk about, which ones are good and which ones are bad. And then lastly, in this module, we're going to talk about where the HR department may come into conflict with the legal system. Okay? So first, as we can see in this picture here, the process of selection is quite a long process. It starts with recruitment, it starts with identification, screening, right? Preliminary predictions, actual decisions, here all of a sudden administrative stuff, make sure that they can pass the drug test, things of this nature. But as you can see, the hiring is, followed by things like training, socialization. So clearly this is just part of a larger story that we're going to be continuing in further modules. Okay? So we'll start here with recruitment a little bit. And there's lots of ways to recruit, some better and some worse. It sometimes depends upon the position. So before we can do the act of selection, we need to recruit, and that's sensible. We find that sometimes recruitment can be impacted by, let's say, for example, the reputation of the company, absolutely. Also location. It's far easier to recruit people to DFW than it is to a rural part of the state. So clearly location is a huge factor in the recruitment. And so there's, in one way there's a big breakdown here. You could talk about recruiting internally or recruiting externally, right? So if you do internal recruitment, it's obviously cheaper. You send out a company-wide email or something. And it's good. It creates loyalty and morale in your company. It's good because you're recruiting people that you already know are successful in your corporation. But of course, when you promote somebody within your company, you now leave that position empty. And you're promoting somebody that was already successful, and now you have to hire somebody that you don't know about. So internal recruitment's got some ups and downs, but so does external recruitment, right? You can bring in diversity, new ideas, okay, which it can be good and can be bad, because sometimes when you bring in new ideas in a diverse workforce, it kind of poof, a perfectly organized environment goes kapooshi. So lots of possibilities here. There's lots of ways that you can do recruitment. I mean, in the olden days, it used to be classified ads in the newspaper. When I was a kid, it was every Wednesday, the Action Advertiser was the free paper, right? The free paper on Wednesdays would have the classified ads in it. And that was it. That's how you get your job as a busboy. So obviously the internet is clearly the way to go nowadays. But again, newsletters, employee referrals. I mean, heck, I was recruited to this position because I was a member of the Southwest Psychological Association, and when Texas Wesleyan University needed to recruit applicants, they put out a wide net, and they just simply sent out a group email to everyone associated with the Southwest Psychological Association. So it's like, okay, there you go. Or I guess help wanted signs is still used. I see them around. Employee referrals, but in psychology, often the most common would be the APA Monitor has classified ads still, or even the Chronicle of Higher Education. The APA would be much more specific to just psychology jobs, whereas the Chronicle of Higher Education would be broader for all academic positions. Okay. So employee referrals are actually pretty important too, because what happens is if you have a successful employee, let's just say they tend to have successful friends. That's kind of how that stuff works, okay? And so you find that, yes, referrals from successful employees are more likely in fact, to be successful. I love this one. Small print. You gotta give me. A software company ran a referral campaign. The employees, if a referral results in an interview, your name is entered in a raffle, and the prizes were a TV, 5 cases of beer, 36 Baby Ruth bars, and I can't even make that up. All right, that's awesome. So it can be, well, as it says here, 50% of private organizations have it, but public organizations generally don't. But it clearly can be used to increase diversity in a workforce, such as police or firefighters, which is hugely important. We're going to talk about how the company or organization should reflect, the diversity of the organization should reflect the diversity of the people that they serve. Okay, so job fairs are kind of, depends who you ask. Obviously, ask the headhunter, thinks job fairs are a load of crap. It's a good place, perhaps, if you are looking for a job, to get ideas about where you can pursue employment. I mean, there's multiple reasons for it. So one of the biggest trends in PSYOP is, the Society for Industrial Organization Psychology, talent attraction and retention in a candidate-driven market. Post-COVID, many workers have shifted, and this is maybe a generational shift. Clearly, in my grandfather's generation, it was pretty clear when you got a job with a company that there was some expectations that you were probably going to retire from that company. And maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much. Whereas now job seekers really often don't plan to stay at a job for more than a year. They simply see these jobs as a bouncing off point to one and to use for a different job. So it's a completely different world, and it is hard for companies, because when an employee leaves, you lose an awful lot, not just as a successful employee, but institutional wisdom and collaborative work and things of this nature. Okay? So we'll start to talk more about the actual act of selection in the next module.